Thank you. I know that national identities played an important role in this political struggle, but I'd like you to comment on religious identity, because often this struggle, this political struggle, has been projected abroad as a religious struggle. People talk about Protestants and Catholics, and people, associate people with various political ideologies as a result. So I wonder what role you saw people's religious identities playing in this struggle, and secondly, the role of the various churches in that struggle also.
In terms of women, it depends again on a bit like John, it depends again on the organisation. Clearly, O'Connell was campaigning for what he called Catholic Emancipation, so most of his supporters and the meetings, the women, one of the reasons why women could get so involved in O'Connell's movement was a lot of the meetings were actually held in the Catholic chapel, and so it was already a female space, so to speak, before O'Connell began to encourage meetings to be held in it. Later on, clearly the Ulster Women's Unionist Council were campaigning really against some of the restrictions, as they saw it, that might come with an independent Catholic Ireland. But if you look at nationalist women in the period 1912 to 22, they're a mixture of Protestant and Catholic women. Some of the most prominent women, like Constance Markievicz, come from a Protestant background. And the divisions among them are not between Catholic and Protestant. The real divisions among the nationalist women are over the suffrage and whether they should be campaigning first for the vote for women, or whether they should, as many, like Constance Markievicz, argued, that home rule or independence should come first, and then that the men would look after the women afterwards. So that was the big division rather than religion.
I mean, I think this is a really, really difficult, interesting question. I mean, if we talk for a moment just about the contemporary troubles, the great unanswered question hardly posed in our society is the end of the troubles that have come about, is this at least partly a function of the decline in serious religious feeling in both communities? I think it's a really, really interesting question, and one that is, all our discussions is one that's never people skirt around, and because I think that may actually be so, that it's partly altered my attitude somewhat towards when I first worked on this. And you can see in the Unionist case an awful lot of strictly political argumentation and strictly economic argumentation. But I think that there is a religious passion there, which the more I worked on, I began to realize had to be acknowledged. And if you look, and the interesting thing is to actually look at the Irish Times, for example, when it covers something like Covenant Day, it's sort of impressed by the political mobilization, the seriousness of intent of these people signing the Covenant, but also the fact that you have senior clergymen preaching and around the place, and particularly at that time the Presbyterian leadership, people like the moderator McKean, basically saying that God is on our side. And the Irish Times has an editorial which says something words to the effect that we actually, of course, this cause is right and so on, but there is a problem about this kind of theological endorsement of a political cause. And it's quite clear that even sort of Dublin Unionists coming from just slightly outside this structure of feeling are struck by intense religious emotion fueling this particular campaign. And I think you can see similar examples on the nationalist side. And I really do think it's, the connection between religion and politics in this period is very important. More important than I first thought when I first started to work on it. And the problem is to hold these things in tension because, as I've said earlier, there are genuine economic unionist concerns about home rule. Perfectly rational concerns. There are genuine unionist political arguments, but I do think that religious feeling, and I would actually say passion, is also a part of the situation. And I also think that one of the things that defines the situation we're actually in now in Ireland, we don't really probably, is actually one of the really interesting questions is, have the Troubles ended because, in part because religion is in decline in both communities as a serious part of people's heads?
Have we another question? We seem to have exhausted it tonight. Well, it remains for me to thank our three speakers, Professor Bew, Professor O'Dowd, and John Killen, and to thank you all for coming, and to remind you that from now on, these meetings will be held on Wednesday evenings. Today was an exception. The launch, for various reasons, was held on Thursday. And next Wednesday evening, in this venue, Dr. Alan Parkinson, Belfast-born historian who lectured in South Bank University in London, will be talking about Friends and Covenants, the Ulster-Unionist campaign against Irish Home Rule, really anticipating his new book, which looks again at British Conservative and British establishment support for the Ulster-Unionist cause, something we touched on tonight. And there will be minor contributions by Gordon Lucy, analysing the Ulster Covenant of 1912, its origins, its resonances with the Scots Presbyterian past, and I'll be saying something myself about the pro-Home Rule Covenant of 1912, which was also a Protestant protest. So I'd like you to thank our speakers this evening. Thank you very much.